Joining me, Rita Panahi, Sky News host and star columnist for the Herald Sun, and Daniel Wild, Director of Research at the Institute of Public Affairs. Rita, how important is Jeffrey Blaney's intervention in the Bruce Pascoe scandal?
Enormously important. He is such a widely respected figure. His wealth of knowledge is astonishing, and he's got the courage to do it. Like he said there are a lot of academics who self-censor, who are worried about the backlash that comes if you correct any of this fantasy narrative that's out there, anything that is seen as being damaging to the ideological cause. And they see it's easier just to shut up and not say anything. And we need people with courage, with backbone, to stand up for the truth.
Daniel, can I just pick up on what Rita just said? And Jeffrey Blaney himself, this refusal or failure or fear of so many academic historians to call out Bruce Pascoe. I mean, he's promoting a completely fantastical, invented new history. The ABC, the national broadcaster, is promoting it heavily into schools. It's getting a New South Wales Premier's Prize. They say nothing. I mean, there's been one or two murmurs a couple of years ago, but basically nothing. What does that tell you?
Well, it tells me, Andrew, that there is a fundamental crisis on university campuses in Australia. It's a failure to pursue the truth, to go where the evidence goes, go where the arguments go, in the name, as Rita said, of self-censorship, of political correctness. But it's just one of a number of series of crises. We know there's a free speech crisis on university campuses. We know there's an academic freedom crisis on university campuses, as evidenced by the sacking of Professor Peter Ridd for his considered opinions on climate change and the Great Barrier Reef by James Cook University. We know there's a funding crisis due to heavy reliance on international students. We know there's an influence crisis due to Confucius Centres from funded by the Chinese Communist Party. And this is just another example, Andrew, of how, unfortunately, Australia's institutions, which have been great bastions of Western civilization, of freedom, of the pursuit of truth, of the pursuit of knowledge, have fallen so far and have become just so corrupted and so incompetent, and now are a parasitical influence on our society rather than a beneficial influence on our society.
I know. I feel like we're back in the days of ancient Greece, where a free thinker like, Socrates is put to death by the institutions, by the men of Athens. I sort of think our universities are on the side of the killers of Socrates. That's just me. Rita, the Prime Minister has been heavily promoting this deal, or it's actually a letter of intent to manufacture a vaccine once there is one, a vaccine
if
in this case.
One.
If there is one, exactly. Well, and it applies to only, I believe, the one in Oxford of the 160 or so around the world that are being worked on. He says this vaccine will let us lift these bans. So we've got to wait till then? I don't know. What do you make of the way he's been selling this?
God, I have been so disappointed, I've got to say, by the federal government and by Scott Morrison in particular in recent weeks. I acknowledge early on dealing with an unprecedented crisis, the likes of which we haven't seen in our lifetime, and it was an unknown entity. Now we know a great deal more. We are 4 or 5 months into this pandemic, and yet we still don't have communicated to the Australian people any medium to long-term strategy beyond a vaccine being made available. What if there is no vaccine in the next 6 months, 12 months, 18 months? Are we going to be locked down indefinitely? Will our borders be closed indefinitely as the rest of the world returns to normal? Are us and New Zealand going to remain closed off, become some sort of a banana republic out here on our own? I mean, what is our plan B if there is no safe, effective vaccine within the next 18 months? And I cannot believe that the Prime Minister has not communicated that to the Australian people to say, yes, this is an option. If we don't have a vaccine, if we don't have an effective treatment for this virus, we can still rejoin the world and restart our economies, because we will go down this path. There's been no communication. We've been treated like mushrooms, kept in the dark and fed crap.
Daniel, I think Rita's put much better something I was alluding to earlier, that I just wonder whether hoping, praying, there will be a vaccine, this Hail Mary pass. There may well be, but even a year to wait for it is a very long time. It just seems to me to distract attention away from the need to find a way to live with this virus now.
Oh, exactly, Andrew. I mean, Rita is spot on in her assessment of that. And I would add in saying we need another way. We can't wait for a vaccine. We can't lock down every time there's an outbreak. And we also can't do, herd immunity because it's high risk and very uncertain. So we need a different way of approaching it. And I would argue, Andrew, the way we go is have a risk-based, proportionate approach to managing the coronavirus. Focus on the elderly, focus on those with comorbidity factors, focus your resources on aged care facilities, focus on activities and behaviours that are of high risk of propagating the virus. If you're inside with a lot of people in close quarters, that's a higher risk than if you're outside exercising with a few mates, and it should be treated differently. And have a contact tracing system that works. By the time we have these measured, considered approaches to living with the coronavirus, that's going to deal with the vast majority of cases. Where there's hotspots, where there's outbreaks, focus the resources on them. But we cannot wait 6 or 12 months or however long for a vaccine. The lifting of the lockdown measures cannot be predicated on the development and the implementation of a vaccine, because that may never come.